The question.
Yes. At the SES 2011 in New York, we were talking about bounce rates. That bounce rates became more important for search engines. What do you think about that? And do you think this might be not that's easy to tackle? Like it's open for spammers. Maybe. What do you think about the bounce rate? Is it important?
Can it be manipulated? Oh, probably it's many different questions. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. And there's very little I can actually talk about on this topic, guys. To be honest with you, it's a signal that we would want to look at because it's an intent or it's a form of satisfaction that a user is giving back to us. Okay, but again, when we look at signals, right, we look at signals on scale, on really big scale. Okay, and then we also look at them at a very small scale. So we can see patterns happening, right? So if your competitor is constantly coming to your website or coming to our website, performing a search, and then going click and back and click and back and click and back. I mean, we see that pattern very easily,
but then again,
and you just discount it.
Probably he's clicking and going back because the results you're showing him are not my websites. So it's not the good results, you know?
No, that's not the case. We only show the best results. Okay. But if somebody is doing that to you, then the pattern becomes obvious, right? So then we can kind of like just ignore that pattern and say, okay,
if it's way out of the ordinary,
right?
It's suspicious.
Right, exactly. Because we do have an understanding of what would be considered ordinary.
Sure.
So if it's,
large
somebody
numbers give you a good average, right?
Right. And if somebody unleashes a robot on you and, all of a sudden there are 50,000 back actions every minute, that's probably a problem.
I'm running a TV ad.
It's a fairly good signal. Something is not normal. But the main thing that people need to think about around this bounce rate is it's not the rate itself, right? It's the reason behind the rate. So why are users doing this? And is that got anything to do with my landing page, my content, my presentation? Is it something that I'm doing on a website that is making the user go back?
And I'm sure it's also like a competitive factor. So it's not like only my bounce rate, but it has to be compared with other people ranking for my keywords, for the same keywords.
Exactly.
And then compared to that,
Exactly, because what you'll find over time
if I have a 90% bounce rate, everybody else in the SERPs has a 95%. Bounce rate,
you look better.
Really good.
Exactly. Right? And that's a very critical point on this. Everything is kind of compared against everything else. So, bounce rates can be lower or higher. You'd obviously want to have a bounce rate as low as possible. That's what you'd strive for. But if the average bounce rate on that topic is 20%, and you're at 10%, then you're ahead of the curve.
The bigger question was that's manipulative. Manipulative? No, how is it?
It can be manipulated.
Yeah. Isn't it true that it can be very easily manipulated? My God.
If it's something that can be easily manipulated, then it's not a good signal. So we're watching for that kind of stuff all the time, right? So it's not like we're very smart. Right? We're not going to be sitting down going,
do not disagree.
Well, maybe no one will figure that out and we'll just leave it out there, right? We really do take pains to make sure that if we're looking at something, we're saying to ourselves, all right, what's the logical outcome of this? So if we want to rely on something, we need to know that it's trustworthy before we can actually activate it, right? That is critical for us.
So it's not on the long tail?
It doesn't matter where it's applied, right? It's always something that we're watching for. Okay. And everything that we look for applies, whether it's head or long tail, doesn't make a difference to us, right? The theory behind it's all the same.
Okay.
And what's your take on SEO tools? They seem to proliferate in the last 1 or 2 years.
I noticed that too. I love them. I think some of them are absolutely fantastic. I think some of them are just not so good. Right. There are a lot of good enterprise level tools out there, which is primarily what I tend to gravitate toward. I'm a fan of building tools for my needs, which is what my team did back at MSN.
What every engineer does, right?
Yeah.
Not invented here syndrome.
No, exactly. But I'm not an engineer.
Oh, okay.
So my approach to it though is you have to deal with scale somehow. And in order to deal with scale, you need certain factors in place. Most off-the-shelf systems are still trying to crack that level that I was in need of. But there are still lots of them out there that are fantastic for it, right? And there are tools today that can actually handle that load, right? 3 years ago, they weren't there. Now they're there. I think the SEO tools are fantastic, but you have to be really careful about what they're telling you, right? And how you're using it. You have to make sure that the database is current in it, that if they're running against rules and telling you the work they need to do, that the latest updates have been factored in. Worse is, how do you even factor in the latest updates? Because we, as an SEO, you kind of haven't figured out what it means yet, and did that actually affect, do I rewrite something? Does this have more prominence? And this kind of stuff, right? So, so you need to make sure that what you're using is stable as well. Okay, not a big fan of tools that do scraping for ranking results. People should be avoiding those things.
Why? Because the server load we're causing it.
The engines do not appreciate that, right? And we see where it's coming from.
But then again, they still work.
Well, it gets you your result, and we see where it's coming from. So, do you actually want to upset us, or?
But you don't know if a search is. If a search is initiated, you don't know which of the results is initiating the search. It might even be somebody who's not ranking there yet because,
Right. But we see the IP addresses, we see all of the background detail of the requests being made, and if we see a pattern,
deal with that all the time.
Absolutely. And generally, most tools, not a problem.
Yeah.
However, if they're overused, that can be an issue. Okay. And if we get pushed too hard, we can push back.
Okay. You're also working with a captcha?
Pardon me?
You're working also with a captcha?
Like a captcha system, if there's...
Oh, yeah, that's a normal part of it, right? Okay. Right. And it's odd because I see that trigger sometimes, even when I'm doing stuff manually.
Oh, that's because we've installed stuff on your computer. Like special codes and stuff. Don't worry.
Don't look around. It's okay. You won't notice it. It's fine.
Okay, one last question, because it's obviously a German podcast. What do you think? Do you have contact with SEO in Germany, and what do you think of it?
Yeah, actually, part of my team that I used to work for is based in Munich, and I think there's it's very strange. There are pockets of people around the world that have really gotten into online marketing and SEO. Germany is one of those areas.
So which are other areas?
Portland, Oregon. I know.
Never heard of it. Have to go there.
It's one state below me on the West Coast. It's a fantastic place. But the culture grows up, right? And the people get involved in it, and then they get together, and that's what builds the culture. And it is so incredible, because when you go to small events in these areas and you talk with people, it's amazing, the learning. The things they understand, the tests that they've run, the stuff that they've kind of taken out of that and then said, wow, this works, so we're going to pursue this angle. It's fantastic.
All right. Thanks a lot for your time.
Yeah, definitely.
OM Report and Andre Alpa would like to thank you for your attention. You can get more episodes on www.OMReport.com.